Millionaire's pregnant wife discovers his affair, leaves letter, and gone forever gone. Regret endures. Jian, are you awake? Minho called out, adjusting his custom-tailored suit jacket as he strode through their spacious living room. The sound of his Italian leather shoes echoed against the high ceilings. Park Ji-yeon emerged from their bedroom, her delicate frame now softened by the 6-month pregnancy that had transformed her body. Her hand rested protectively over her rounded belly as she offered her husband a gentle smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I've been up for hours," she replied, moving to the kitchen island where a breakfast spread had been arranged by their housekeeper. "The baby was restless last night." Minho checked his watch, a rare Patek Philippe that had cost more than most people's annual salary. "I'm sorry I didn't notice. I was reviewing the Singapore acquisition documents until late." Jian nodded, having heard variations of this explanation countless times over the past year. She watched as he poured himself coffee, his movements efficient and precise, like everything else he did. "Will you be home for dinner tonight?" she asked, trying to keep the hope from her voice. Dr. Kim said we might be able to determine the baby's gender at today's appointment. Minho's expression flickered with something resembling guilt before settling back into its usual composed mask. "I can't promise, Jian. The board meeting could run late, and then I have that dinner with the Japanese investors." The disappointment was a familiar weight in Jian's chest. She turned away, busying herself with arranging fruit on her plate, not wanting him to see the tears that threatened to form. "You've built such an incredible company," she said softly, gazing out at the empire that stretched before them. "LM Holdings wasn't even on the market's radar when your father handed it to you. Now it's one of the top conglomerates in Asia." Minho's shoulders straightened with pride. "Father only gave me a foundation. Everything else," he gestured toward the view, "I built for us, for our future." Jian approached him, placing her hand gently on his arm. "I know, and I'm proud of you. I just wish... Sometimes I wish that future included more moments together in the present." For a brief moment, Minho's eyes softened. He placed his hand over hers, and Ji-yeon caught a glimpse of the man she had fallen in love with, the ambitious but warm-hearted business student who had pursued her relentlessly despite her modest background as an art student. "After this merger closes, things will calm down," he promised, the same promise he'd made before the previous deal, and the deal before that. "We'll take that trip to Jeju Island. Just the three of us." Ji-yeon's phone chimed with a calendar reminder about her doctor's appointment. Minho's phone rang simultaneously, his executive ringtone. "I need to take this," he said, already pulling away, his mind transitioning back into the CEO of LM Holdings. "It's Wang from the Shanghai office." Ji-yeon watched as he walked onto the terrace, his voice shifting into confident English as he negotiated whatever crisis had emerged overnight. She caressed her belly, whispering to her unborn child. "Your father is building an empire for you," she murmured, trying to convince herself as much as the baby. "That's why he's never here. He's securing your future." But as she gathered her purse to head to yet another prenatal appointment alone, the emptiness of their palatial home seemed to mock her. The sculptures, paintings, and designer furniture that Minho had insisted on purchasing, symbols of their success, felt like poor substitutes for companionship. On her way out, Ji-yeon paused at the large family portrait that dominated their entryway. Minho standing proudly behind her seated figure, his hand on her shoulder, both of them smiling for the camera. It was a perfect image of a power couple, the kind that appeared in business magazines celebrating success stories. What the camera hadn't captured was how the photographer had needed to call Minho 3 times to put down his phone during the session, or how Ji-yeon had cried in the bathroom afterward because he'd immediately left for an emergency conference call. "Mrs. Lee, your car is ready," the building's concierge announced through the intercom. Ji-yeon sat curled on the living room sofa, her sketchbook open but untouched on her lap. 7 months pregnant now, she found herself alone more often than not. She checked her phone again, 10:47 p.m., and still no message from Minho. She dialed his number, listening to the rings echo into emptiness. Voicemail. Again. "Minho, it's me. I just wanted to make sure everything is okay. You mentioned you'd be home for dinner. Call me when you can. Her voice sounded strained even to her own ears. She hung up, tossing the phone aside with a sigh that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. The baby kicked, a strong movement that made Ji-yeon smile despite her melancholy. At least you're here with me, she whispered, rubbing her belly gently. Just as she was about to head to bed, her phone buzzed. Not a call, but a text message. Late meeting with Day 1 group. Don't wait up. 5 years of marriage, and this was what their communication had been reduced to. 8 cold words on a screen. Ji-yeon's hand trembled slightly as she placed the phone face down on the coffee table. Something about the message felt wrong. Minho had mentioned the Day 1 group meeting that morning, but he'd said it was scheduled for next week. She walked to the large mahogany desk where Minho occasionally worked from home. Hesitating only briefly, she opened his planner, the one his assistant meticulously updated each week. Flipping to today's date, she found no mention of any Day 1 group meeting. I'm being paranoid, Ji-yeon muttered to herself, closing the planner. Pregnancy hormones making me crazy. But as she turned to leave, her eyes caught on Minho's suit jacket draped over the chair, the one he'd worn 2 days ago. On impulse, she picked it up, burying her face in the fabric, seeking the familiar scent of her husband's cologne. Instead, her senses were assaulted by something different. A floral fragrance, subtle but unmistakably feminine. Not her perfume, not anything she recognized. Ji-yeon's heart began to pound. With shaking hands, she checked the pockets, finding only a business card for a high-end hotel in Gangnam and a receipt for a dinner for 2 at an exclusive restaurant, dated on an evening when Minho had claimed to be working late at the office. No, she whispered, her mind racing to find innocent explanations. Business dinner, client meeting, that's all. She replaced the jacket carefully, trying to push away the dark thoughts creeping into her mind. But sleep eluded her that night, her dreams haunted by faceless women wearing floral perfume and her husband's smile directed at someone else. The next morning, Minho returned as Ji-yeon was preparing breakfast. He looked tired but energized in that particular way that came from closing a significant deal. You didn't have to wait up, he said, loosening his tie and dropping his briefcase by the door. Ji-yeon kept her voice neutral. I didn't. How was the Day 1 meeting? Productive. We're making progress. Minho poured himself coffee, not meeting her eyes. What did Dr. Kim say about the baby? The abrupt change of subject wasn't lost on Ji-yeon. Everything's fine. Normal development. She paused, gathering courage. Minho, I found your jacket from Tuesday. There was perfume on it. The coffee cup paused halfway to Minho's lips. For a fraction of a second, something like panic flashed in his eyes before his expression smoothed over. Must have been from the client dinner. We were in a crowded restaurant. He sipped his coffee. Why were you going through my jacket? The subtle shift to accusation made Ji-yeon's chest tighten. I wasn't going through anything. I was putting it away. Minho's phone chimed. He checked it immediately, his fingers typing a quick response. Ji-yeon noticed how he angled the screen away from her view. Who's texting you at 7 a.m.? The question slipped out before she could stop herself. Minho's expression hardened. Work never stops, Ji-yeon. You know that. He placed his empty cup in the sink with unnecessary force. I thought we agreed you wouldn't question my schedule. The stress isn't good for the baby. Ji-yeon felt tears threatening. I'm not questioning your schedule. I just miss my husband. Minho's expression softened momentarily. He approached her, placing a hand on her shoulder. I'm right here. You're being emotional. Dr. Kim said that's normal at this stage. Don't do that, Ji-yeon pulled away. Don't dismiss my feelings as pregnancy hormones. Minho checked his watch. I have a meeting in an hour. I need to shower and change. As he walked away, Ji-yeon noticed a small smudge on his collar, the faint trace of lipstick in a shade she didn't own. That evening, while Minho was supposedly at a business dinner, Ji-yeon sat at his computer. She hated herself for what she was about to do, but the nagging doubt had become unbearable. With trembling fingers, she entered his password, their anniversary date. Surprised it still worked. His email opened before her, and there it was, message after message from COY, with subject lines that turned Ji-Yun's blood to ice. Missing you, last night. Our plans. She opened one, dated just yesterday. Minho, the weekend in Busan was perfect. I've booked the suite at the usual place for Thursday night. I've been thinking about your hands on me all day. Your Yuna. Ji-Yun closed the laptop, her world collapsing around her. She stumbled to the bathroom, barely making it before the nausea overwhelmed her. As she knelt on the cold tile floor, one hand supporting her pregnant belly, the other wiping her mouth, the reality crashed down upon her. Her husband was having an affair with someone named Yuna, and she was carrying his child. The baby kicked again, as if sensing her distress. Ji-Yun placed both hands on her belly, a fierce protective instinct washing over her. It's just us now, she whispered to her unborn child, tears streaming down her face. Whatever happens, I'll protect you. Hong Kong again? She asked, her voice carefully neutral despite the acid churning in her stomach. Minho nodded without looking up. The Zhao merger is at a critical stage. I'll be back tomorrow evening. He zipped the bag with finality. Don't forget your checkup at 2 p.m. today. I won't. Ji-Yun placed her hand on her belly, now prominently rounded at 7 months. The baby has been moving a lot. The doctor said that's a good sign. Minho's expression softened momentarily. He approached, placing his hand next to hers. The baby kicked, as if responding to its father's touch. Strong, he murmured, a rare moment of genuine connection breaking through his usual distance. Ji-Yun felt tears threatening. How could he stand there, feeling their child move beneath his palm, while planning to spend the night with another woman? The tenderness of the moment made the betrayal even more unbearable. Minho, her voice caught. Is there anything you want to tell me? Anything at all? His hand withdrew abruptly. A flash of something, guilt, irritation, crossed his features before his businessman's mask returned. What do you mean? His voice held a warning edge. Ji-Yun swallowed hard. Nothing. Just be safe. He nodded, already checking his phone. My car's waiting. I'll call you when I land in Hong Kong. After Minho left, Ji-Yun sat motionless on their bed, listening to the silence of their empty home. Hong Kong. The lie tasted bitter even in her thoughts. She reached for her phone, dialing the doctor's office. Hello, this is Park Ji-Yun. I need to reschedule today's appointment. Something urgent has come up. The taxi dropped Ji-Yun at the Seoul Medical Center just before noon. Not for her appointment, but for something much more painful. I'm here to see Dr. Kang Soo-jin, she told the receptionist, her heart thundering in her chest. Minutes later, her longtime friend and gynecologist greeted her with concern. Ji-Yun, what's wrong? Your appointment isn't until 2 p.m. In the privacy of Soo-jin's office, Ji-Yun finally broke down. I think Minho is having an affair, she whispered, the words like shards of glass in her mouth. Soo-jin's expression shifted from shock to sorrow. Ji-Yun, I'm so sorry. Are you certain? Ji-Yun nodded, tears streaming down her face. There's a woman named Yuna. I found emails, and he's supposed to be in Hong Kong today, but I know he's not. Soo-jin took Ji-Yun's hands in hers. What can I do? I need to leave early for my appointment, Ji-Yun explained through her tears. I want to see if you can check the baby now. I'm not coming back at 2 p.m. I need to know if my baby is okay before I do what I need to do. An hour later, with reassurance that her baby was developing perfectly, Ji-Yun stood outside a gleaming glass skyscraper in Gangnam, LM Holdings headquarters. She had never visited Minho's office unannounced before. Her heart pounded as she entered the imposing lobby, conscious of curious glances at her pregnant form. Mrs. Lee, the receptionist's surprise was evident. We weren't expecting you today. I thought I'd surprise my husband with lunch before his trip, Ji-Yun replied, forcing a smile. Is he available? The receptionist's expression shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Lee left for the airport about an hour ago, Mrs. Lee. His flight to Hong Kong leaves at 1:30 p.m. Jian maintained her smile despite the confirmation of his lie. Of course, I must have misunderstood the timing. Is Ms. Seo Yuna available? My husband mentioned she was handling some documentation I need to sign regarding family assets. The receptionist's discomfort intensified. Ms. Seo called in sick today, Mrs. Lee. I see. Jian's voice remained steady even as her world continued to crumble. Thank you for your help. Outside, she hailed another taxi. Grand Hyatt Hotel, please. The Grand Hyatt lobby bustled with international travelers and business people. Jian approached the front desk, her practiced smile in place despite the churning in her stomach. Excuse me, I believe my husband may have checked in already. Lee Minho, the clerk typed on his computer. I'm sorry, ma'am. We don't have a guest under that name. He might have used his English name, Michael Lee, or perhaps the reservation is under Seo Yuna. The clerk hesitated before checking again. We do have a Ms. Seo checked into one of our executive suites. Would you like me to call up to the room? No, thank you. Jian's voice trembled slightly. I'll surprise him. She sat in the lobby for nearly 2 hours, her back aching, her heart breaking. At precisely 3:17 p.m., she saw them, Minho entering through the revolving doors, his hand resting possessively on the lower back of a strikingly beautiful young woman. They were laughing, intimate in a way that Jian hadn't experienced with her husband in years. The woman, Yuna, she presumed, was everything Jian was not. Tall, sleek, confident, dressed in expensive business attire that highlighted her slender figure. No pregnancy had altered her perfect silhouette. Jian watched as they crossed the lobby, oblivious to her presence. Minho's face wore an expression of unguarded happiness she barely recognized anymore. When they reached the elevators, he pulled Yuna close, kissing her with passionate familiarity as they waited. The elevator doors closed behind them, but the image burned itself into Jian's mind forever. With shaking hands, she texted their driver, Mr. Kim, could you please meet me at the Grand Hyatt? Don't tell Minho. 20 minutes later, the elderly Mr. Kim, who had driven the Lee family for over a decade, helped Jian into the back seat of the black Mercedes. Are you all right, Mrs. Lee? He asked, concern evident in his weathered face. Jian couldn't speak, simply shaking her head as tears streamed down her face. Home, Mrs. Lee? No, she whispered. Not home. Take me to Minho's office, please. There's something I need to do. The executive floor of LM Holdings was nearly empty when Jian arrived. Minho's assistant had gone for the day, leaving his office unlocked. With Mr. Kim standing guard outside, Jian entered the spacious corner office that symbolized everything her husband had achieved, and everything he had sacrificed their marriage for. She moved to his computer, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Using the password she discovered and Minho's company credentials, she accessed files he never intended for her to see. What she found devastated her on an entirely new level. Not just evidence of the affair, that pain was already branded into her heart, but financial documents revealing that Minho had been methodically moving assets to private accounts for months. Preparation for a life without her. Among the documents was a prenuptial agreement amendment he drafted but not yet presented to her. One that would limit her claim on his assets in case of divorce, particularly if the divorce involved infidelity on his part. Jian sat back, one hand on her belly as the baby kicked furiously, as if sensing her distress. He's been planning this? She whispered to the empty office. All this time, she printed the documents, tucking them into her purse with trembling hands. As she prepared to leave, her eyes fell on a framed photo on Minho's desk. Not of her or their wedding, but of him shaking hands with a business partner at an award ceremony. There was no trace of her in this space, no acknowledgement of their life together. It was, in that moment, surrounded by the cold symbols of Minho's success and betrayal, that something broke inside Jian. But from that breaking came an unexpected clarity. Mr. Kim, she said as she emerged from the office, I need to go to my prenatal appointment now. After that, could you take me to the bank? There are some arrangements I need to make. The elderly driver nodded, his eyes reflecting a knowing sadness. "Of course, Mrs. Lee. Anything you need." As they rode the elevator down, Jian placed both hands on her belly, making a silent promise to her unborn child. This wasn't just about a husband's betrayal anymore. This was about securing a future, one that might not include the man who had just shattered her world beyond repair. Jian moved methodically through the rooms, touching familiar objects. A wedding photo, a vase they'd bought in Venice, the cashmere throw he'd given her last Christmas. Each item seemed to hold the ghost of a memory, moments that now felt like elaborate fictions. In their bedroom, she opened her closet and selected only essential items: comfortable clothes suitable for her pregnancy, a few treasured pieces of jewelry from her grandmother, her art supplies. She worked with quiet determination, packing 2 suitcases with the artifacts of the life she was choosing to save from the wreckage. At her writing desk, Jian sat down and pulled out beautiful stationery, handmade hanji paper she had purchased years ago for special occasions. Her hand trembled as she uncapped her fountain pen, but her resolve remained steady. "Minho," she wrote, her elegant handwriting flowing across the page despite her inner turmoil. "I remember the day you asked me to marry you. You said I was your compass, that without me you would lose your way. I believed you then. I've spent 5 years believing you, supporting you, loving you even as you grew more distant. Today, I stood in the lobby of the Grand Hyatt and watched my husband kiss another woman. Today, I discovered financial plans that tell me you've been preparing to leave us, me and our unborn child, for months. I won't ask why. Perhaps the answer is simple: you stopped loving me. Or perhaps you never truly did. Maybe I was just another acquisition, another milestone in your journey to success. I won't fight you for what doesn't matter. Keep your empire, your penthouses, your cars. I don't want the life you built while destroying ours. What I take with me is my dignity, my child, and the knowledge that I deserved better than the lies you offered. Our baby deserves better than a father who could betray their mother while she carries them beneath her heart. I once told you that love wasn't something you could schedule between meetings or delegate to an assistant. You laughed at my naivety. Perhaps you were right to laugh. I was naive to believe that success hadn't changed you, that power hadn't corrupted what we once shared. Don't try to find me. By the time you read this, I will be gone from your life as completely as you have been absent from mine. You once had everything, Minho. Now you have only what you truly valued: your wealth, your status, and the freedom to pursue whatever pleasure you seek without the inconvenience of a wife who loved you and a child who would have adored you. Gone forever. Gone." Jian, she read the letter once more, tears falling onto the paper, creating translucent blooms across her words. With deliberate movements, she placed it on his pillow, weighed down by her wedding ring. The doorbell rang, startling her. Jian wiped her tears, composed herself, and went to answer it. Mr. Kim stood there, his weathered face solemn. "The car is ready, Mrs. Lee." "Thank you, Mr. Kim." Jian's voice was steady now. "Please take these suitcases. I'll be down in a moment." After the driver left with her belongings, Jian took one final walk through the penthouse. In the nursery they had begun to prepare. She paused, running her fingers over the crib that had been delivered only last week. The mobile of stars and moons hung perfectly still above it, waiting for a baby who would never sleep there. "We'll find a new place to dream," she whispered to her unborn child, her hand cradling her belly. In the kitchen, she removed her house keys from her keychain and placed them on the counter. Every movement felt ceremonial, the dismantling of one life to preserve another. At the door, she hesitated, looking back at the life she was abandoning. For a moment, doubt crashed over her like a wave. Was she overreacting? Could they repair what was broken? Should she stay and fight for her marriage? Then she remembered Minho's face as he kissed Yuna, the unguarded happiness she hadn't seen directed at her in years. She remembered the financial documents, the calculated betrayal that had been months in the making. Jian closed the door behind her with quiet finality. In the car, Mr. Kim glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Where shall I take you, Mrs. Lee?" Jian met his eyes, seeing the concern and loyalty there. "The train station, please." May I ask where you're going? She hesitated. It's better if you don't know, Mr. Kim. Minho will ask you. The elderly driver nodded solemnly. Mrs. Lee, I've worked for the Lee family for many years. I drove Mr. Lee's father before him. I've seen many things. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Your destination will remain between us. Tears sprang to Ji-yeon's eyes at this unexpected kindness. Mokpo, she whispered. My grandmother's house in Mokpo. Mr. Kim nodded. A good choice. The sea air will be healing. They drove in silence through Seoul's evening traffic, the city's frenetic energy, a stark contrast to the stillness inside the car. As they approached the station, Mr. Kim spoke again. Mrs. Lee, forgive my boldness, but I have something for you. He reached into his pocket and withdrew an envelope. I've been setting aside some of my earnings for my retirement. I want you to have this to help you start anew. Ji-yeon was stunned. Mr. Kim, I can't accept. Please, he interrupted gently. I have no children of my own. Let me help you and your child. Consider it a loan if your pride requires it. Ji-yeon took the envelope with trembling hands. Why would you do this for me? Mr. Kim's eyes met hers in the mirror again, filled with a fatherly compassion that broke through the last of her composure. Because I watched you bring light into that young man's life, and I've watched that light dim as he lost his way. Some men don't understand the value of what they have until it's gone. He pulled up to the station entrance. And some treasures, once lost, can never be reclaimed. Ji-yeon clutched the envelope to her chest, overwhelmed by this unexpected ally. Thank you, she whispered. I will repay your kindness someday. Live well, Mrs. Lee. That will be repayment enough. As Mr. Kim helped her from the car and carried her suitcases to the platform, Ji-yeon felt a strange sense of peace begin to emerge through her grief. The evening train to Mokpo would depart in 20 minutes, carrying her away from the life she had built with Minho and toward an uncertain future that was, nevertheless, her own to shape. Standing on the platform, she watched Mr. Kim's car disappear into the traffic. The finality of her decision washed over her, not just leaving a husband, but leaving behind the identity she had crafted as Mrs. Lee, wife of the business prodigy. Who was Park Ji-yeon without that title? She would have to discover that woman again. As the train pulled into the station, Ji-yeon placed her hand on her belly, feeling the reassuring movement of her child. It's just you and me now, she murmured. But we'll be okay. I promise. The doors opened, and Ji-yeon stepped aboard, moving not just between locations but between lives. From a beautiful fiction to a difficult truth. From the wife of Lee Minho to a woman who had yet to rediscover herself. As the train pulled away from Seoul, carrying her toward the coastal village of her childhood, Ji-yeon watched the glittering skyline recede. Somewhere in that constellation of lights was the penthouse, where her letter waited on Minho's pillow. Somewhere in that city, her husband held another woman in his arms, unaware that his carefully constructed world was about to collapse. The thought should have brought satisfaction or at least vindication. Instead, Ji-yeon felt only a profound sadness for what could have been, for the love that had withered under the weight of ambition and betrayal. Ji-yeon, he called, loosening his tie. I'm home early. The meeting wrapped up ahead of schedule. Silence answered him. He checked his watch. 10:17 a.m. Perhaps she was at a doctor's appointment. He moved through the quiet space, noticing small inconsistencies. Her favorite teacup missing from the kitchen counter. The absence of her cardigan that usually hung on the back of the dining chair. Ji-yeon? He called again, a note of uncertainty creeping into his voice. In their bedroom, Minho stopped abruptly. Something was wrong. The subtle scent of her perfume that usually lingered in the air was missing. Her bedside table, normally cluttered with pregnancy books and moisturizers, had been cleared. He yanked open her closet door, half empty, with obvious gaps where her favorite items had been. His heart began to race, a cold dread seeping through his veins. That's when he saw it. The envelope on his pillow, weighted down by the platinum wedding band he had placed on her finger 5 years ago. Minho's hands trembled slightly as he picked up the letter, the elegant handwriting instantly recognizable. As he read, the color drained from his face. By the time he reached the final words, "Gone forever, gone," he had sunk onto the edge of the bed, the paper shaking in his grasp. "No," he whispered, the single word inadequate to express the chaos erupting inside him. "No, no, no." He grabbed his phone, dialing Ji-yun's number. The automated voice informed him the number was unreachable. He tried again, and again. Panic propelled him through the penthouse, searching for clues, for any indication of where she might have gone. The nursery door was ajar. Inside, the room remained intact but felt abandoned somehow, as if the dreams it had contained had evaporated. Minho leaned against the crib, his mind racing. This couldn't be happening. Ji-yun wouldn't actually leave. She was emotional because of the pregnancy. She was overreacting. She would cool down and come back. She had to. His phone rang and he lunged for it. Not Ji-yun, Yuna. He declined the call, sudden revulsion twisting his stomach. Minho loosened his tie further, feeling as though he couldn't breathe. He dialed another number. "Mr. Kim, it's Minho. Have you seen Ji-yun today? Or yesterday?" The elderly driver's voice was carefully neutral. "No, sir. Not since the day before yesterday. If you hear from her, tell her to call me immediately. It's urgent." "Of course, sir." Minho paced the living room, the enormity of Ji-yun's absence expanding with each passing minute. His phone buzzed with messages from his assistant about meetings, from Yuna asking when she would see him again. He ignored them all. His eyes fell on a framed photo he normally walked past without noticing. Ji-yun laughing on their honeymoon in Bali, her eyes crinkled with genuine joy, her hand reaching toward the camera, toward him. Something cracked inside Minho's chest. He picked up the photo, running his thumb over her smiling face. When had he last seen her smile like that? When had he last tried to make her smile? "What have I done?" he whispered to the empty room. His phone rang again, his assistant. "Not now, Sung-jae," he snapped. "Mr. Lee, I apologize for the interruption, but there's something you need to know. Mrs. Lee came to the office yesterday afternoon." Minho froze. "What did she want?" "She didn't speak with me, sir. She went directly to your office and spent approximately 20 minutes there. She seemed distressed when she left." The blood drained from Minho's face as realization struck him. The financial documents, the prenuptial amendment, the records of his meetings with Yuna disguised as business appointments. "Thank you, Sung-jae. Cancel all my meetings for today. Family emergency." Minho collapsed onto the sofa, his empire suddenly meaningless. The penthouse, with its designer furniture and priceless art, felt hollow and cold without Ji-yun's presence. His phone rang again, Yuna for the third time. With a surge of disgust, he answered. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "Minho, I've been trying to reach you all morning." Yuna's voice was silky, intimate. "I can't stop thinking about yesterday. When can I see you again?" "Never," Minho replied, the word cutting through the air like a blade. "It's over, Yuna. Whatever this was, it's finished." There was a moment of stunned silence before Yuna's voice turned cold. "Is this some kind of joke? After everything you promised me, I made a mistake, the biggest mistake of my life. Your wife found out, didn't she?" Yuna's laugh was brittle. "And now you're panicking. Don't worry, she'll forgive you. Women like her always do. They're too afraid to leave the lifestyle." The casual cruelty of her assessment hit Minho like a physical blow. Is that what he had become? A man whose wife was valued only for her tolerance of betrayal? "Ji-yun is gone," he said, his voice hollow. "She's left me, and I deserve it." "She'll be back," Yuna said dismissively. "Where would she go? What would she do without you? She's pregnant, for God's sake." Minho closed his eyes, remembering the determination in Ji-yun's handwriting. "You don't know her. I thought I did. But I was wrong about so many things." "Minho, you're not thinking clearly. We can talk about this later when you've calmed down." "There won't be a later, Yuna. You're fired. effective immediately. HR will process your severance package. Don't contact me again. He ended the call and blocked her number, a small, utterly inadequate act of commitment to a wife who was already gone. Minho moved to the windows, staring out at the Seoul skyline, the empire he had built at the cost of his marriage. In the reflection of the glass, he caught sight of himself. Impeccable suit, perfect haircut, the very image of success. But his eyes held a haunted quality he had never noticed before. "Ji-yun," he whispered to the empty penthouse. "What have I done to us?" His phone buzzed again, this time a news alert from a business publication. Trouble at LM Holdings? Stock dips amid rumors of financial irregularities. Minho's blood ran cold. If Ji-yun had taken evidence of his financial maneuvering. But no, she wouldn't expose him like that. She wasn't vindictive. The letter had made that clear. She didn't want his money or his possessions. She wanted the husband he had promised to be, the father their child deserved. A husband and father he had failed to become. Minho sank to his knees in the center of his perfect penthouse, the letter still clutched in his hand. Outside, Seoul continued its relentless pace, indifferent to the collapse of one man's carefully constructed life. "Come back," he whispered, though there was no one to hear his plea. "Please come back." But the words dissipated in the empty air, and Minho knew with devastating certainty that some mistakes couldn't be unmade. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt once burned. He had gambled with the most precious thing in his life and lost. Not in a high-stakes business deal, but in the quiet, daily choices that had slowly poisoned his marriage. He thought of Ji-yun somewhere out in the world, carrying their child, facing an uncertain future without him. The ache that bloomed in his chest was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Deeper than ambition, more painful than failure. "I'll find you," he vowed, rising to his feet with sudden determination. "Whatever it takes, I'll find you and make this right." The driver pulled up to a modest blue house perched on a hill overlooking the harbor. Its wooden shutters needed painting and ivy crept up one wall. But to Ji-yun, it was more beautiful than any penthouse. "This is it?" the driver asked, eyeing the humble structure. Ji-yun nodded, suddenly afraid. What if her grandmother rejected her? What if this sanctuary existed only in her memories? Before she could pay the driver, the front door opened. Halmini stood there, smaller than Ji-yun remembered, her once black hair now completely silver, but her eyes still sharp as the sea glass she collected from the beach. "Ji-yun, ah," the old woman called, her weathered face creasing with surprise and concern. "What are you doing here?" "Your baby." Ji-yun's composure crumbled at the sound of her grandmother's voice. Tears she had held back through the entire train journey spilled down her cheeks as she struggled to climb out of the taxi. "Halmini," she managed through her tears. "I've come home." The older woman rushed forward with surprising agility, her thin arms wrapping around Ji-yun's shoulders as the taxi driver awkwardly removed the suitcases from his trunk. "Come inside, child," her grandmother murmured. "Whatever has happened, we will face it together." The house was exactly as Ji-yun remembered. Simple furnishings worn smooth with use, shelves lined with books and sea treasures, the scent of barley tea and ginger permanently infused into the walls. Her grandmother led her to the kitchen table, pressing her gently into a chair before bustling about preparing tea. "When is the baby due?" Halmini asked, placing a steaming cup before Ji-yun. 2 months, Ji-yun replied, her hand automatically moving to her belly. "A girl." The old woman nodded, her eyes seeing more. Then Ji-yun was ready to share. "And your husband? Where is the famous Lee Minho while his wife and daughter travel alone to this forgotten corner of Korea?" Ji-yun stared into her tea, watching ripples form as her tears dropped into the amber liquid. "Minho doesn't know where I am, and I want it to stay that way." Halmini sat across from her, weathered hands folded patiently on the table. She didn't press, didn't demand explanations. She simply waited, a silent harbinger of the wisdom that came from 82 years of life. "He betrayed me," Ji-yun finally whispered, "with another woman. He was planning to leave me, Halmini, after the baby comes." He had it all arranged, financial documents, legal papers. Her grandmother's face hardened, ancient eyes flashing with protective fury. "The fool," she muttered. "The arrogant, blind fool. I didn't know where else to go," Jian confessed. "I have money saved, enough for a while, but I need. You need home," Halmiani finished for her. "And that is what you have found. This house has stood against typhoons for 60 years. It can shelter you from this storm as well." Relief flooded through Jian, releasing the tension she had carried since discovering Minho's betrayal. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet," the old woman said with unexpected humor. "The roof leaks when the winter rains come, and the hot water is temperamental at best. Your fancy soul bones might find my home quite primitive." Jian smiled through her tears. "My fancy soul bones are tired of marble floors that feel like ice. They remember wooden ones that creak and tell stories." Halmiani nodded approvingly. "Come, I'll show you to your room. It's small, but it faces the sea. The sunrise will greet you every morning." The days that followed passed in a gentle rhythm unlike anything Jian had experienced in years. She woke with the fishing boats, breakfasted on rice and banchan prepared by her grandmother's skilled hands, and spent her mornings walking the shoreline, her feet bare despite the autumn chill. In the afternoons, she helped her grandmother in the small vegetable garden behind the house or sat in the warmth of the kitchen, sorting through decades of family photographs and mending clothing with careful stitches. "You need occupation," Halmiani declared on the 5th day, placing a wooden box before Jian. "Hands that create have no time for sorrow." Jian opened the box to find paintbrushes, ink stones, and watercolors. Her art supplies from university, stored by her grandmother all these years. "You were talented once," the old woman said simply, "before you became someone's wife. Perhaps it's time to remember who you were." That afternoon, Jian set up an impromptu studio on the small patio overlooking the sea. Her first attempts were clumsy, her once fluid lines now hesitant and uncertain. But by sunset, something had awakened in her. A forgotten joy, a sense of self that had nothing to do with being Mrs. Li. As weeks passed, her belly grew along with her confidence. The villagers, initially curious about the pregnant stranger in their midst, soon accepted her presence. The fishmonger saved the best sea bream for Halmiani's granddaughter. The postmaster's wife, herself a mother of 4, brought knitted blankets for the coming baby. The local doctor checked on her progress free of charge, concerned about her blood pressure but pleased with the baby's development. "You look better," the doctor commented during one visit. "When you first arrived, your eyes had that city darkness. Now there's light returning." Jian smiled, recognizing the truth in his words. The crushing weight of betrayal still visited her at night, but each day brought small mercies. Sunrise over water, the call of gulls, her grandmother's hands braiding her hair as they had when she was a child. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching fishing boats return with their lanterns glowing like fireflies on the darkening sea, Halmiani broke their comfortable silence. "He will find you eventually, you know. Men like him don't lose what they consider theirs without a fight." Jian tensed. "How?" "I left no trail. I haven't contacted anyone from my old life." Halmiani chuckled softly. "Child, there are only so many places a wounded heart can go. He will think of this place sooner or later. And if he does?" The old woman regarded her granddaughter thoughtfully. "What then, Gianna? Will you run again? Or will you face him and speak the truth he needs to hear?" Jian placed both hands on her rounded belly, feeling her daughter kick against her palms. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to face him. Strength isn't about never breaking," Halmiani said, her voice gentle but firm. "It's about how you gather the pieces afterward. Look at you, painting again, helping me in the garden, preparing for this child. You're already stronger than you know." Later that night, unable to sleep, Jian stood at her bedroom window, gazing at the moonlight shimmering on the distant water. Her phone, silent since she left Seoul except for necessary calls to her doctor and bank, lay on the bedside table. On impulse, she powered it on, watching as notifications flooded the screen. 47 missed calls from Minho, 23 voicemails, dozens of texts ranging from angry demands to desperate pleas. The most recent, sent just hours ago, Jian, please. Just tell me you're safe. Tell me our baby is safe. I'll give you whatever you need, space, time, anything. Just please let me know you're alive. Her thumb hovered over the delete button. It would be easier to erase these digital ghosts, to continue pretending her old life didn't exist. But Halmiani's words echoed in her mind. Strength isn't about never breaking. Jian composed a brief message. We are safe. That's all you need to know for now. She sent it, then immediately powered off the phone, her heart racing as if she'd run a marathon. Outside, the tide was coming in, waves crashing against the shore with rhythmic persistence. Like memories, like regret, like hope. They kept coming, regardless of whether one was ready to receive them. We are safe, she whispered to her unborn daughter, echoing the message she'd sent to the father who might never truly know her. And somehow, someday, we will be whole. He read it again, his fingers trembling slightly as they hovered over the screen. She was alive. Their baby was alive. The crushing weight of his worst fears lifted, replaced by a desperate, clawing hope. Minho tried calling immediately, but the call went straight to voicemail. He tried texting back, but the message failed to deliver. She had reached out just enough to ease his torment, then disappeared again behind a digital wall. Pacing the living room that still held traces of Ji-yun's presence, a forgotten hairpin on the bathroom counter, the lingering scent of her perfume in their closet, Minho felt something crystallize within him, a determination that transcended the frantic desperation of the past weeks. She contacted me, he whispered to himself. That means something. The next morning, Minho called Mr. Kim to his office. The elderly driver entered with the careful dignity that had always characterized him, his weathered face revealing nothing as he stood before the desk. Mr. Kim, Minho began, his voice steady. I know you helped Ji-yun leave. I'm not angry. In fact, I'm grateful someone was there for her when I was not. The driver's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, a wary recognition of Minho's changed demeanor. Sir, Minho raised a hand. I don't want you to betray her confidence. I just want to know, is she somewhere safe? Somewhere good for her? Mr. Kim studied his employer, seeming to measure the sincerity of his words. After a long moment, he nodded once. Yes, Mr. Lee. She found shelter in a place that brings her peace. Minho exhaled slowly. Thank you. That's all I needed to know. After the driver left, Minho sat at his desk, opening a drawer he hadn't touched in years. Inside lay a small, worn leather journal, a relic from his university days before ambition had consumed him. He flipped through pages filled with dreams and plans written in a younger man's hand. Somewhere in these pages, he hoped to find a clue to the person he had once been, the man Ji-yun had fallen in love with. One entry caught his eye, dated the week after he'd first met Ji-yun at a university exhibition showcasing her artwork. Met with Ji-yun again today. We walked along the river for hours, talking about everything and nothing. She sees the world differently, finds beauty in broken things, possibility in emptiness. When I'm with her, I remember there's more to life than balance sheets and business plans. She grounds me when I start floating away into ambition. I think she might be my compass in this life. Minho closed the journal, a painful realization dawning. He had lost his compass years ago, and with it, his true direction. Success had become a hollow pursuit without the woman who had once given it meaning. 3 days later, Minho walked into the LM Holdings boardroom, facing the stern faces of his executive team and major shareholders. Rumors about his personal life and financial irregularities had spread, causing the company's stock to fluctuate wildly. The vultures were circling, sensing weakness in the once invincible CEO. Gentlemen, Minho began, his voice calm despite the tension in the room. I've called this meeting to announce some significant changes. He distributed folders containing detailed plans for corporate restructuring, profit-sharing adjustments, and a revised leadership structure. The room fell silent as board members paged through the documents. This is unorthodox, Chairman Park finally said, removing his glasses to stare at Minho. You're proposing to dilute your own control of the company? To establish a governance board with actual power? To redirect 20% of profits to employee benefits and social responsibility initiatives? Minho nodded. I am. May I ask why? The question came from Director Kong, whose calculating eyes had always reminded Minho of a shark assessing prey. Because I built this company at too high a cost, Minho replied, surprising himself with his candor. I sacrificed things more valuable than money, more precious than success. I'm not abandoning LM Holdings. I'm ensuring its sustainable future while reclaiming mine. Murmurs circulated around the table as the implications sank in. Some faces showed confusion, others calculation. A few even reflected reluctant admiration. And if we reject these proposals? Chairman Park asked, his bushy eyebrows furrowed in concern. Minho smiled, a genuine expression that felt foreign on his face after weeks of misery. Then I'll resign as CEO, sell my controlling interest, and pursue these changes as an outside investor. Either way, gentlemen, my decision is made. The meeting dissolved into heated debate, but Minho felt a strange lightness as he left the boardroom. For the first time in years, he had chosen a path based not on profit or power, but on the person he wanted to become, the person who might someday deserve a second chance with Ji-Yun. That evening, Minho sat in his nearly empty office, most of his personal items already packed away. His assistant entered with a hesitant knock. Sir, Director Kong is requesting an urgent meeting regarding today's proposals. Tell him I'll see him tomorrow, Minho replied, continuing to write in his journal. I have something more important tonight. After his assistant left, Minho picked up his phone, dialing a number he hadn't called in years. Professor Lee speaking, answered a gruff voice that instantly transported Minho back to his university days. Professor, it's Lee Minho, your former student. Pause. The corporate wunderkind. What can I do for you after all these years? Minho took a deep breath. I need to know about a small coastal village, a place where an artist might go to heal a broken heart. The professor's laugh was knowing. Ah, so the great Lee Minho has finally learned that some treasures can't be acquired through hostile takeovers? I assume we're talking about Park Ji-Yun, your wife who, if rumors are correct, recently left you. Minho winced at the bluntness but nodded to himself. Yes, Professor. I've made terrible mistakes, but I need to find her. Not to force her to return, but to tell her I understand why she left, and that I'm trying to become someone better. Silence stretched across the line. Finally, the professor sighed. Ji-Yun was one of my most talented students, a genuine artist with a pure aesthetic sensibility. When she married you, many of us worried she would lose that essential spark, that you would eclipse her. Minho closed his eyes, remembering Ji-Yun's abandoned art supplies in their home, the sketches that had become increasingly rare over the years. You were right to worry. I did eclipse her. I dimmed her light without even realizing it. The professor seemed to be considering something. Ji-Yun used to paint magnificent seascapes when she was my student. She told me once that her grandmother lived in a small fishing village where the light on the water changed 100 times a day. That each sunrise contained a universe of color no artist could fully capture. But she would spend her life trying. Minho's heart raced. What was the village called? She never said exactly, but she mentioned her grandmother collected sea glass on a particular beach where the tide pools formed perfect mirrors at dawn. She painted it once, won a national competition with that piece. I believe she called it Mokpo Morning. Mokpo? Minho whispered, the name resonating with something Ji-Yun had mentioned years ago, a detail he had filed away and forgotten in his single-minded pursuit of success. Minho, the professor's voice grew serious. If you find her, remember this, true love isn't possession. It's witnessing someone's light and helping it grow brighter, even if that means standing in the shadows yourself sometimes. After the call ended, Minho sat motionless, the professor's words echoing in his mind. Outside his office window, Seoul's skyline glittered with the familiar ambition that had once defined his existence. But for the first time, those lights seemed cold and distant compared to the warmth of a possibility. Finding Ji-yeon in a small coastal village, perhaps sitting by the sea, her artist's eyes capturing the changing light. Mokpo, he whispered again, the name becoming both destination and promise. I'm coming, Ji-yeon, not to reclaim you, but to earn the right to stand beside you again, if you'll let me. Dawn was breaking over Mokpo as Ji-yeon made her way carefully down the stone steps leading to the beach. At 8 months pregnant, these morning walks had become more challenging, but she craved the solitude and beauty of the shoreline before fishermen and villagers populated it. Her grandmother had protested. You shouldn't be climbing those steps alone in your condition. What if you fall? I'm careful, Halmione, Ji-yeon had assured her. And I need this time. The baby and I both do. Now, reaching the bottom step, Ji-yeon exhaled in satisfaction. The tide was out, revealing tide pools that mirrored the pink-gold sky with perfect clarity. She had begun painting these reflections, capturing the ephemeral moments when heaven and earth seemed to trade places. He had rehearsed this moment countless times during the journey to Mokpo, what he would say, how he would approach her. But now, seeing her absorbed in her art, her face illuminated with quiet concentration, all his practiced words evaporated. Minho took a hesitant step down, then another. A loose stone shifted under his foot, clattering down the path. Ji-yeon's head snapped up, her eyes widening as they locked with his. For one breathless moment, they simply stared at each other across the distance, physical and emotional, that separated them. Her face, once so easy for him to read, was now a complex landscape of emotions that Minho struggled to navigate. Shock, pain, fear, and something else, a steely resolve that hadn't been there before. Ji-yeon, he called softly, her name carried on the morning breeze. She didn't respond, but her hand moved instinctively to protect her belly, a gesture that pierced Minho's heart. Did she truly believe he might harm their child? Had his betrayal run so deep that she now saw him as a threat? He continued down the steps, moving slowly, as one might approach a wounded animal. When he reached the bottom, still several yards from where she sat, he stopped. I won't come closer if you don't want me to, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I needed to see you, to know you're all right. Ji-yeon's expression hardened. How did you find me? Professor Lee mentioned Mokpo. Your painting, Mokpo morning. Minho gestured to the tide pools reflecting the dawn sky. I remembered you telling me about your grandmother's house by the sea, though I never listened well enough to remember the details. A bitter smile touched Ji-yeon's lips. You were always too busy for details. The accusation, gentle as it was, landed like a physical blow. Minho nodded, accepting it. Yes, I was too busy for what mattered most. Ji-yeon studied him, taking in his appearance. The designer suit replaced by simple jeans and a sweater, his normally perfect hair tousled by the sea breeze, dark circles beneath his eyes suggesting many sleepless nights. Why are you here, Minho? She finally asked, closing her sketchbook. What do you want from me? The question was fair, but how could he possibly answer it? How could he distill months of soul-searching into words that wouldn't sound hollow or rehearsed? I don't deserve your forgiveness, he began, choosing his words carefully. I don't even have the right to ask for it. I just wanted you to know that I understand why you left, and that you were right to go. Surprise flickered across Ji-yeon's face, clearly not the response she had expected. She shifted slightly, wincing as she adjusted her position on the rock. Minho instinctively moved forward to help her, then caught himself, remembering his promise not to approach without permission. Are you in pain? Should I get someone? Ji-yeon shook her head. Just the usual discomforts of the third trimester. Nothing to worry about. She gestured to a flat rock near her, though not too close. You can sit if you want. Standing there looking miserable is making this more awkward than it needs to be. Minho sat, maintaining the distance she had silently prescribed. The sound of waves filled the silence between them, a rhythmic backdrop to the most important conversation of his life. "You look well," he finally said, his eyes taking in the healthy glow of her skin, the newfound confidence in her posture. "This place suits you." "It always did," Ji-yeon replied, looking out at the sea. "I should never have left it behind." The implication was clear. She regretted not just their marriage but the life choices that had led her away from her true self. Minho felt the weight of that regret as if it were his own. "I've made changes," he said suddenly, needing her to know. "At LM Holdings, I've restructured the company, diluted my control, established a governance board with real power." Ji-yeon raised an eyebrow, genuine curiosity breaking through her guarded expression. "Why would you do that? The company was everything to you." Minho met her gaze directly. "Because it wasn't everything. It just took losing you to realize that." A seagull cried overhead, wheeling against the brightening sky. Ji-yeon watched its flight, her expression thoughtful. "Do you remember our first apartment?" she asked unexpectedly. "That tiny place near the university?" Minho nodded, surprised by the shift in conversation. "With the leaky faucet and the neighbor who played saxophone at midnight." "We were happy there," Ji-yeon said softly. "We had nothing, but we were happy. I would paint at that rickety table while you studied business plans late into the night. We would talk about the future, making all these grand plans, but—" She paused, her eyes growing distant. "Somewhere along the way, your plans became our life, and my dreams became optional." The truth of her words struck Minho with devastating clarity. He had never forced Ji-yeon to give up her art, but he had created a life where it had no real place, where her identity as his wife had gradually eclipsed her identity as an artist. "I never meant to dim your light," he whispered, echoing Professor Lee's words. "I was so focused on building our future that I forgot to live in our present." Ji-yeon studied him, her artist's eyes seeing beyond the surface. "And Yuna? Was she part of building our future too?" Minho flinched at the name. "No, she was a mistake. A terrible, unforgivable mistake born from ego and loneliness." He met Ji-yeon's gaze unflinchingly. "I won't insult you with excuses or justifications. What I did was wrong, and nothing can change that." "You're right. Nothing can change it." Ji-yeon's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she tucked her sketchbook into her bag. "What happened with Yuna wasn't just a mistake, Minho. It was a betrayal of everything we promised each other. And the financial arrangements you made. You were planning to leave me all along." "No," Minho interjected urgently. "That's not." He stopped, forced himself to be honest. "I don't know what I was planning. I was lost, Ji-yeon, making arrangements for every contingency because I couldn't face what I was becoming. I never actually wanted to leave you." A bitter laugh escaped Ji-yeon. "Yet you shared another woman's bed while I carried your child." The raw pain in her voice made Minho's next words die in his throat. What defense could he possibly offer? What explanation could soften such a fundamental betrayal? They sat in heavy silence, the gap between them filled only by the sound of waves and distant fishing boats. Finally, Ji-yeon struggled to her feet, one hand supporting her lower back. This time, Minho couldn't stop himself from rising to help her. "Please, let me—" "Don't." Ji-yeon's voice was sharp, halting him mid-motion. "I've managed without you for months. I can stand up by myself." Once on her feet, Ji-yeon looked at Minho directly, her eyes clear and determined. "I need to get back to Halmione. She worries when I'm gone too long." "Can I walk with you?" Minho asked, careful to keep distance between them. "Just to the house? I won't come in, I promise." Ji-yeon hesitated, then nodded curtly. They began the climb back up the stone steps, Minho staying a few paces behind, ready to catch her if she stumbled but respecting her need for independence. "Our daughter," Ji-yeon said suddenly, pausing to catch her breath, "will be born in 3 weeks, maybe sooner. The doctor says everything looks good." Minho's heart constricted at the casual mention of their child. His daughter. "Have you chosen a name?" Ji-yeon resumed climbing, her steps measured and careful. "Haun. It means grace or Blessing from heaven. Haun, Minho repeated, the name feeling sacred on his tongue. It's beautiful. They reached the top of the steps, the small blue house visible just up the winding path. Jian turned to face Minho, the morning sun illuminating her face. I need you to understand something, she said quietly. I didn't leave to punish you or to make you chase after me. I left because I needed to remember who I was before I became Mrs. Li. I needed to find myself again, for my sake and for Haun's. Minho nodded, understanding more than she realized. And have you found yourself? A small, genuine smile touched Jian's lips, the first he had seen since arriving. I'm getting there. Every day a little more. I'm glad, he said simply, meaning it despite the pain her independence caused him. You deserve that chance, Jian. They stood facing each other, the sea breeze stirring Jian's loose strands of hair. Minho fought the urge to reach out and tuck them behind her ear as he had done countless times in their life together. Where are you staying? Jian asked unexpectedly. The small inn near the harbor. I don't know how long. He trailed off, realizing he had no plan beyond finding her. Jian nodded, seeming to make a difficult decision. Haun will need her father, Minho, not just financially but in her life. I won't deny her that relationship, no matter what's happened between us. Hope flared in Minho's chest, not for reconciliation, not yet, but for something perhaps more precious, the chance to know his daughter. Thank you, he whispered, emotion making his voice rough. I promise I'll be worthy of that trust. He hesitated, suddenly unsure of his right to intrude on this peace she had found without him. For weeks he had planned this moment, rehearsed what he would say, how he would approach her. Now, faced with the reality of her presence, all his practiced words evaporated. Drawing a deep breath, Minho began his descent. The rough stone steps demanded his attention, forcing him to look down rather than at the woman who still hadn't noticed his approach. Each step felt symbolic, a deliberate journey downward from the heights of arrogance that had cost him his marriage. When he reached the bottom step, he paused again, watching Jian's hand move across her sketchpad with fluid confidence. How long had it been since he'd seen her create anything? Years, perhaps. Another failure to add to his growing list. He had allowed her talent to wither while he pursued his own ambitions. Jian, he called softly, unwilling to startle her. Her hand froze mid-stroke. For a moment, she remained perfectly still, as if hoping she had imagined his voice. Then slowly she turned. The shock on her face transformed rapidly. Surprise to disbelief, disbelief to anger, anger to a wary resignation that pained Minho more than outright rejection would have. How did you find me? Her voice was level, controlled, revealing nothing of the storm that must be raging inside her. Minho took one step closer, then stopped, respecting the invisible boundary between them. Professor Kim. He remembered your paintings of this place. Jian's lips tightened. She closed her sketchbook with deliberate care, as if concluding something precious that he had no right to witness. Why are you here, Minho? The question was direct, stripped of emotion. The practiced speeches died in his throat. Instead, he found himself speaking a truth he hadn't fully acknowledged until this moment. Because I forgot how to breathe without you, he said simply. Because every room in our home echoes with your absence. Because I look at balance sheets and stock portfolios and none of it matters anymore. Jian's expression didn't soften. If anything, her eyes grew colder. And I'm supposed to be moved by that? By you discovering my value only after losing me? Her words were precise, cutting. The Jian he had left behind in Seoul would have softened her rebuke, cushioned the blow. This new Jian, or perhaps the original Jian resurfacing, had no such inclination. No, Minho admitted. You have no reason to be moved. You have no reason to listen to me at all. He gestured helplessly at the tide pools reflecting the dawn sky. I needed to see you, to know you're all right. I'm not all right, Jian replied, her hand moving protectively to her belly. I'm 8 months pregnant and abandoned by my husband. I'm rebuilding a life you shattered. I'm trying to remember who I was before I became Mrs. Lee Minho. Each word struck him like physical blows. Ji-yun, don't, she interrupted, raising her hand. Don't tell me you're sorry. Don't tell me you've changed. Words are easy, Minho. You've always been skilled with words. Then let me show you, he said quietly. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not asking for forgiveness, not yet. I'm just asking for a chance to prove that I understand what I lost, what I threw away. Ji-yun studied him, taking in his appearance for the first time. Gone was the perfectly tailored suit, the immaculate haircut. Minho wore simple jeans and a sweater. His hair was longer, slightly tousled by the sea breeze. Dark circles underlined his eyes, evidence of sleepless nights that matched her own. You look terrible, she observed, a hint of her old warmth flickering momentarily in her eyes. Minho's laugh was short and genuine. I feel terrible. I deserve to feel terrible. Something in his candor seemed to reach her. Ji-yun sighed, her shoulders dropping slightly. Hermione predicted you would come. She says you're as stubborn as the tide. Your grandmother sounds wise. She is. Ji-yun struggled slightly to rise from her rock, her pregnant form making the movement awkward. Minho stepped forward instinctively to help her, then halted, uncertain of his welcome. Ji-yun hesitated, then extended her hand slightly, not in forgiveness, but in practical acknowledgement of her condition. He took her hand, feeling the familiar smoothness of her skin, the artist's callus on her middle finger. The simple contact after months of absence sent electricity through his body. As he helped her stand, they found themselves closer than they'd been since that last morning in Seoul when he'd felt the baby kick. She's active this morning, Ji-yun said, noticing his glance at her belly. She? A faint smile touched Ji-yun's lips. Yes, a daughter. In 3 weeks. The reality of their child, a daughter, hit Minho with unexpected force. He had abandoned not just his wife but his daughter, an innocent being who had no part in his betrayals. Ji-yun, I want to be part of her life. Even if you can't forgive me, even if our marriage is beyond repair, please don't shut me out of her life. Ji-yun's eyes filled with unexpected tears. Do you know what hurts the most, Minho? It's that you were planning to leave us. Not just me, her too. Your own daughter wasn't enough to keep you faithful. The accusation hung between them, undeniable in its truth. Minho had no defense to offer, no explanation that could soften the reality of his betrayal. I have no excuse, he said finally. I can only tell you that I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of knowing her, of knowing you. Ji-yun wiped her eyes, frustration evident in the gesture. I hate that I still cry so easily. The doctor says it's hormones, but I think it's just everything. Minho nodded, respecting her need to redirect the conversation. You should sit down again. Can I join you? Just to talk. After a long moment, Ji-yun nodded, lowering herself back onto the rock. Minho sat nearby, careful to maintain a respectful distance between them. Tell me about the company, she said, surprising him. Is it surviving the scandal? Minho gazed out at the horizon, where fishing boats were returning with their morning catch. It's changing. I'm changing it. The board has accepted most of my proposals for restructuring. I've appointed 3 new directors, all women, all with backgrounds in sustainable business practices. Profits are down temporarily, but employee satisfaction is up. We'll be stronger in the long run. Ji-yun studied him with undisguised surprise. That doesn't sound like the Lee Minho I married. No, he agreed quietly. It doesn't sound like the man I became either. I'm trying to find my way back to the person who deserved your love once. The sun had fully risen now, bathing them in golden light. Ji-yun's face softened almost imperceptibly as she squinted against the brightness. You're staying in the village? She asked. At the small inn near the harbor. The owner seemed suspicious of me. I think your grandmother might have warned the entire village about the prodigal husband. A ghost of a smile touched Ji-yun's lips. She probably did. Hermione is protective. As she should be. Minho hesitated, then asked the question that had burned in him for months. Have you been happy here, Jian? Despite everything? She considered the question seriously, her gaze drifting back to the tide pools now glittering in the morning light. Not happy exactly, but healing. Finding parts of myself I thought were gone forever. She touched her sketchbook. Creating again, learning to trust my own voice. Minho nodded, understanding that her answer was its own kind of gift, an honesty he hadn't earned. Will you let me see you again while I'm here? He asked finally. Just to talk, to get to know each other again, without expectations. Jian was silent for so long that Minho began to fear her answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was measured, careful. I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow morning in the village. After that, I usually have tea at the harbor cafe. She met his eyes directly. If you happen to be there around 11, I wouldn't object to company. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even a promise. But it was an opening, a tiny crack in the wall that had separated them since her departure. Thank you, Minho said simply. Jian gathered her sketching materials, preparing to leave. As she stood, she turned to him one more time, her eyes solemn. Minho, understand this. I'm not the same woman who left Seoul. That woman was broken by betrayal. This woman, she gestured to herself, is putting herself back together, piece by piece, and she's stronger than you remember. Minho met her gaze unflinchingly. I'm counting on that strength. It's what gives me hope that someday, not today, maybe not for a long time, but someday you might find room in your heart to let me try again. Jian didn't answer, but as she turned to climb the stone steps back to her grandmother's house, Minho noticed she moved more steadily, her spine straighter than when he had first seen her on the beach, as if giving voice to her strength had somehow reinforced it. He remained on the beach long after she disappeared from view, watching the tide begin its inevitable return to shore, wondering if some forces in nature, like love, like regret, were equally unstoppable in their persistence. That evening, Jian sat with her grandmother on their small porch, the older woman's gnarled fingers working deftly as she mended fishing nets, a skill she had maintained despite her advanced age. So, Halmione said casually, the husband has found you. Jian sighed, rubbing her lower back where an ache had been building all day. Yes, just as you predicted. And, did you send him away with his tail between his legs? He deserves no less. Jian smiled despite herself. I'm meeting him for tea tomorrow. Halmione's hands stilled momentarily. You think that's wise? No, Jian admitted. But I think it's necessary. For me, if not for him. I need to face him. If I'm ever going to truly heal. The old woman nodded slowly, resuming her methodical repair of the net. When your grandfather betrayed me, I refused to speak to him for an entire year. Jian turned to her grandmother in shock. Harabiaji was unfaithful to you? But you never said. Some pains are too private to share, even with those you love most. But yes, your perfect grandfather strayed once, early in our marriage. A moment of weakness with a widow from the next village. Halmione's voice held no bitterness, only the calm reflection of decades-old wounds long healed. What happened, Jian? Her slight frame belying the formidable presence she projected. Jian's grandmother surveyed the cafe with sharp eyes, immediately locating their table. Halmione, Jian exclaimed, surprised. What are you doing here? The old woman approached their table with dignified slowness, her gaze fixed on Minho with unflinching assessment. I came to see this husband of yours for myself, she declared, to look into his eyes and judge whether he deserves even this small moment of your time. Minho stood, bowing deeply to the woman who had sheltered Jian when he had failed her so completely. Grandmother, he said, using the honorific sincerely. Thank you for taking care of Jian and our child when I did not. The old woman did not acknowledge his bow. Pretty words from a pretty mouth, she observed coolly. My granddaughter had many pretty words from you before. What she needs now is truth, however ugly it might be. Halmione, Jian protested gently. You don't need to. I do, the old woman interrupted firmly. She turned back to Minho, her weathered face severe. "Sit," she commanded. Minho complied immediately, feeling like a schoolboy before a feared teacher. Ji-Yun's grandmother remained standing, her small stature somehow dominating the space between them. "You hurt my granddaughter," she stated flatly. "Not just with your betrayal, but with years of neglect before that. You diminished her light to make your own shine brighter." Minho didn't defend himself. "Yes," he agreed quietly. "I did." The old woman's eyes narrowed, clearly expecting denials or justifications. When none came, she continued, "And now you think you can repair all that damage with a few weeks of remorse?" "No," Minho answered truthfully. "I know it will take years, if it's possible at all. I'm not asking for forgiveness, only for the chance to try to earn it." Halmione studied him with penetrating intensity. Whatever she saw in his face must have satisfied something in her, for she nodded almost imperceptibly before turning to Ji-Yun. "I'll be at the fishmonger's," she announced. "Come find me when you've finished here." With that, she departed as suddenly as she had arrived, leaving a wake of silence behind her. "I'm sorry," Ji-Yun said when the door closed. "She's protective." "She loves you," Minho replied. "You're fortunate to have that." Ji-Yun nodded, absently stroking her belly in a gesture Minho had begun to recognize as both protective and soothing, for herself as much as for their child. "Minho," she said after a moment, "I need to know something, and I need the absolute truth, no matter how painful." He braced himself. "Anything." Ji-Yun's eyes met his, direct and unflinching. "Would you have really left us, if I hadn't discovered your plans? Would you have gone through with it?" The question struck him like a physical blow. In the months since her departure, he had avoided this specific question, focusing instead on his remorse, his determination to change. Now, faced with her direct inquiry, he owed her nothing less than complete honesty. "I don't know," he admitted, the words painful in their inadequacy. "I was living two separate lives, the successful businessman with his beautiful, pregnant wife, and the man pursuing a different future with Yuna. I told myself I could postpone the decision until after the baby was born." He shook his head, disgust at his former self evident in his expression. "I was a coward, Ji-Yun, a selfish coward." She absorbed his answer, her face revealing nothing of her reaction. "And Yuna, is she still in your life?" "No," Minho said firmly. "She was fired the day you left. I haven't spoken to her since." "Did you love her?" The question was quiet, but weighted with importance. Minho considered the question with the honesty Ji-Yun deserved. "I thought I did, but it wasn't love. It was ego, excitement, the thrill of forbidden desire. Real love doesn't destroy. It builds. It doesn't take. It gives." He looked directly into Ji-Yun's eyes. "What I felt for her doesn't deserve the same word as what I feel for you." Ji-Yun looked away, her hands cupping her teacup as if drawing warmth from it. "Present tense," she noted softly. "Yes," Minho confirmed. "Present tense." Outside, fishing boats rocked gently in the harbor as gulls wheeled overhead, their cries punctuating the silence that had fallen between them. Ji-Yun seemed lost in thought, weighing his words against the evidence of his actions, past and present. Finally, she spoke. "I can't give you what you want today, Minho. I don't know if I ever can." He nodded, acceptance rather than resignation in the gesture. "I understand. But," Ji-Yun continued, surprising him, "our daughter will need her father. If you're serious about being part of her life, about becoming someone worthy of her trust, then we'll need to find a way forward, some kind of relationship beyond this broken marriage." Hope, tentative but real, bloomed in Minho's chest. "I am serious, more than I've ever been about anything." Ji-Yun nodded, decision made. "Then stay in the village for now. Get to know the community I've become part of. Show me, not with grand gestures or dramatic promises, but with daily choices that you're capable of change. And after the baby comes? One step at a time," Ji-Yun said firmly. "Right now, I need to focus on bringing our daughter safely into this world. After that, we'll see where we stand." It wasn't the reconciliation Minho had secretly hoped for, but it was more than he deserved. A chance to prove himself through actions rather than words. As they finished their tea, the conversation turned to practical matters. Her due date, preparations for the birth, whether he would stay at the inn or find more permanent lodging in the village. When they parted outside the cafe, Ji-yeon hesitated, then spoke. "There's a community festival this weekend, a celebration of the autumn harvest. Everyone will be there." She glanced at him uncertainly. "If you'd like to come, I could introduce you properly to people. Not as my husband, but as my daughter's father." The careful distinction wasn't lost on Minho, but he recognized the offer for the olive branch it was. "I'd like that," he said simply. Ji-yeon nodded, turning to leave, but paused when Minho spoke again. "Ji-yeon," he said softly, "thank you. Not for forgiving me. I know we're nowhere near that, but for allowing me this chance to be in our daughter's life. In yours, whatever that means." She didn't smile, but something in her eyes softened momentarily. "Get some rest, Minho. You look exhausted." As he watched her walk away, toward the market where her grandmother waited, Minho felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Not quite happiness, but something adjacent to it. A sense of rightness, of purpose clearer than any business strategy he'd ever devised. Here in this small coastal village, far from the power and prestige he had spent his life accumulating, Lee Minho had found something worth more than all of it. The beginning of a path toward redemption, toward becoming the man his wife and daughter deserved. Minho arrived just as the sun began its descent, casting long golden rays across the celebration. He had exchanged his usual corporate attire for simple clothes purchased from the village's only clothing shop, dark jeans and a blue button-down shirt that the shopkeeper had assured him was proper festival wear. His hair, longer now than he'd worn it since university, ruffled slightly in the breeze. He felt conspicuous as he made his way through the crowd, the outsider, the city man whose presence generated curious glances and whispered conversations. 3 days in the village had taught him that news traveled faster here than in any corporate boardroom. Everyone knew exactly who he was and why he had come. Minho spotted Ji-yeon near the central performance area, where a group of schoolchildren were preparing to perform a traditional dance. She wore a loose-fitting dress patterned with autumn leaves, her hair adorned with a simple wooden pin that caught the fading sunlight. Her grandmother stood beside her, surveying the festivities with regal dignity. Taking a deep breath, Minho approached them, conscious of the speculative gazes following his progress. "You came," Ji-yeon said when she noticed him, neither pleased nor displeased, merely acknowledging his presence. "I said I would," Minho replied simply. Halmione eyed him critically. "At least you dressed appropriately. Nobody trusts a man in a suit at Harvest Festival." Minho smiled despite his nervousness. "Thank you for the advice, grandmother." The elderly woman sniffed but seemed mollified by his deference. An awkward silence descended, broken fortunately by the arrival of a middle-aged woman Minho recognized as the village doctor. "Ji-yeon, how are you feeling?" the doctor asked, her eyes warm with genuine concern. "Any more contractions since yesterday?" Minho's head snapped toward his wife. "Contractions? You didn't mention—" "Just Braxton Hicks," Ji-yeon reassured them both. "False labor. Dr. Kong says it's normal at this stage." The doctor nodded, then turned curious eyes to Minho. "And you must be the husband we've heard so much about." Minho bowed respectfully. "Lee Minho, thank you for caring for my wife and child." Dr. Kang's assessing gaze wasn't unlike Halmione's. Sharp, penetrating, protective of Ji-yeon. "Your wife is a treasure to this community," she said pointedly. "In just a few months, she's become essential to us. Teaching art to the children, helping design the new tourism brochures, even painting a mural for our clinic waiting room." Pride surged through Minho as he glanced at Ji-yeon, whose cheeks had colored slightly at this praise. How long had it been since he truly appreciated her talents, her generous spirit? "I'm not surprised," he said softly. She's always had the ability to make any place better by her presence. Ji-yun's eyes met his, startled by the sincerity in his voice. The conversation was interrupted by the beginning of the children's performance. As the young dancers took their places, Minho noticed Ji-yun wincing slightly, one hand pressed against her lower back. "Are you all right?" he whispered. "Just back pain," she murmured. "The doctor says it's normal." Minho nodded, though concern lingered. He'd spent the past few days researching pregnancy and childbirth, belatedly educating himself on what Ji-yun had been experiencing alone for months. He knew enough to recognize that back pain could sometimes signal the beginning of labor. Throughout the performance, he kept a watchful eye on her, noting how frequently she shifted position, seeking comfort that seemed increasingly elusive. When the dance ended and applause erupted around them, Ji-yun's face briefly contorted in what appeared to be more than simple discomfort. "Ji-yun," Minho said quietly, "perhaps we should find somewhere for you to sit." Before she could respond, a middle-aged fisherman approached, his weathered face splitting into a wide grin as he thrust a cup of rice wine toward Minho. "So you're the sole businessman," the man exclaimed. "I'm Kong Dae-sung, the best fisherman in Mokpo, though these other fools will dispute it." He leaned closer, alcohol evident on his breath. "You know, your wife is a blessing to this village. My daughter never cared about anything but those phone games until Mrs. Park started teaching art at the community center." Minho accepted the wine with a respectful bow. "I'm learning that Ji-yun has touched many lives here." "Indeed she has." Another voice joined in as an elderly man appeared at Dae-sung's shoulder. "My grandson would never have passed his university entrance exams without her tutoring. A remarkable woman, your wife." More villagers gathered around, each with a story about Ji-yun's kindness or talents, each regarding Minho with a mixture of curiosity and cautious assessment. He answered their questions about Seoul with patience, accepted their thinly veiled warnings about treating Ji-yun properly with humility, and drank the rice wine that seemed to appear continuously in his hand. Through it all, he maintained a protective awareness of Ji-yun, who had finally found a seat on a bench near the town's small monument. Even from a distance, Minho could see the increasing frequency of her winces, the way her hand now constantly pressed against her belly. Excusing himself from the impromptu gathering, he made his way to her side. "You need to go home," he said without preamble. "Something's not right." Ji-yun began to protest, but her words dissolved into a sharp intake of breath as another pain seized her. "How long have you been having contractions?" Minho asked, kneeling before her. "They're not contractions," Ji-yun insisted weakly. "Just practice ones. Braxton Hicks." "Braxton Hicks don't usually come at regular intervals," Minho said gently. "I've been watching. Yours are about 8 minutes apart now." Ji-yun's eyes widened in surprise, both at his observation and his knowledge. "You've been counting?" "Of course I have." He offered his hand. "Please, let's find Dr. Kong and get you home. If it's false labor, no harm done. If not, it's too soon," Ji-yun whispered, fear evident in her voice for the first time. "2 more weeks until my due date." "2 weeks is nothing," Minho reassured her, though his own heart raced with concern. "Our daughter is just eager to meet her amazing mother." After a moment's hesitation, Ji-yun placed her hand in his, the first time she had willingly initiated contact since his arrival in Mokpo. Her fingers felt cold despite the mild evening. "All right," she conceded, "but don't make a scene. I don't want to worry Halmione or ruin the festival." Minho nodded, helping her to her feet with careful support. Together they made their way through the crowd, pausing whenever a contraction gripped her, moving steadily toward where Dr. Kong stood conversing with other village elders. They were halfway there when Ji-yun suddenly clutched Minho's arm with surprising strength. "Something's wrong," she gasped, her face paling. "I feel pressure and wetness." Minho looked down in alarm to see a thin trickle of fluid running down Ji-yun's leg, darkening the ground beneath her feet. His research had prepared him for this moment, even as his heart stuttered with fear. "Your water broke," he said, keeping his voice calm despite the surge of panic. Without hesitation, he called out to Dr. Kong, who turned immediately at the urgency in his voice. The doctor assessed the situation with one glance and was at Ji-yun's side in moments. "How far apart are the contractions?" she asked briskly, professional concern replacing her earlier social demeanor. "About 8 minutes, Minho supplied. But her water just broke." Dr. Kong nodded, already guiding Ji-yun toward the edge of the square. "We need to get her to the clinic. First babies usually take their time, but with premature membrane rupture, we need to monitor for infection." Ji-yun's face contorted as another contraction seized her, stronger than the others. "It hurts," she admitted, her composure cracking. "More than I expected." "I know, dear," Dr. Kong soothed. "We'll get you something for the pain once we're at the clinic." Minho felt utterly helpless, able only to support Ji-yun's weight as another contraction came, closer to the last than the 8-minute intervals he'd been tracking. The reality of the situation crashed over him. His child was coming now, and he was woefully unprepared. "Should we call for an ambulance?" he asked Dr. Kong. "The nearest hospital is in no time," the doctor interrupted. "My clinic is fully equipped for delivery, and Ji-yun and I have discussed this possibility. The baby is coming faster than I expected." As if to confirm this assessment, Ji-yun doubled over with a cry of pain that cut through the festival noise like a knife, drawing concerned attention from nearby revelers. Minho instinctively swept her into his arms, her weight substantial but manageable in his adrenaline-fueled state. "Show me the fastest way to the clinic," he said to Dr. Kong, already moving in the direction she indicated. The world narrowed to this single purpose, getting Ji-yun safely to medical care. Minho moved swiftly through the village streets, barely registering the curious onlookers or Halmiani hurrying to catch up to them. Ji-yun's face was pressed against his chest. Her breathing labored as contractions came with increasing frequency. "I'm sorry," she whispered between pained breaths. "I should have said something sooner. I thought it was normal discomfort." "You have nothing to apologize for," Minho assured her, tightening his hold as she tensed with another contraction. "You're doing amazingly." The small clinic appeared ahead, its lights a beacon in the gathering darkness. Dr. Kong rushed ahead to prepare the delivery room while Minho carried Ji-yun through the doors, past the waiting area adorned with her mural of the sea at dawn, a sight that would have moved him under different circumstances. Inside the delivery room, everything happened with dizzying speed. Nurses appeared to help Ji-yun change into a hospital gown. Monitors were attached to track the baby's heartbeat. Dr. Kong performed a quick examination, her expression shifting from professional concern to urgency. 5 centimeters dilated already, she announced. "This baby is coming fast for a first delivery." "Is that bad?" Minho asked, hovering uncertainly at Ji-yun's bedside. "Not necessarily. Some babies just know what they want," Dr. Kong said with a reassuring smile. "Ji-yun, do you want pain management? We can still administer an epidural." Ji-yun, gritting her teeth through,